that was my first window into, I would say, entrepreneurship outside of hosting keg parties at bars. But
all right, hello everybody. Thank you for coming out. Again, BSN 101 students, there's a QR code to scan to prove that you were here. Strategic management students, you know the drill. You can. Mr. Goodman has a request that for the strategic management students, whenever you jump in to do that, you can screenshot and use that as your assignment post. But I'll let him get to that in just a minute, right? There are, help yourself, waters, some pretzels. We have a table of some interesting items that Mr. Goodman has brought, and he is going to explain his aim for that. Every one of you hopefully got a copy of his book. If you haven't, we want to make sure you get a copy of his book. Mr. Goodman is an entrepreneur. He's a graduate of Shippensburg University. He was a football player and got to have lunch with his old coach, Coach Mack, today, and you did get to speak to the football team for a moment, right? Did he give you the full 3 minutes?
3.5.
3.5 minutes. That's all they could spare. But we're glad that he is here to share with us, coming back. He is the exact kind of entrepreneurial aspiration we have for each and every one of you to succeed. And we'll be able to get into that. And maybe even the carpet failure story at some point. That was a funny one. But those of you that were at our event last time, you know, we keep it to just an hour. We're going to walk through. Dr. Morset is our interviewer, and he has been operating a series of videos for Adventures in Entrepreneurship that we're utilizing to help promote those ideals. And it's always fun to have an audience for it. It makes it work so much better. So thank you for being here. Mr. Goodman, I'd like to hand it to you to share about what would you like them to do.
All right, this is my mic's working. Hot mic, nice. Thanks for everybody coming. Thank you. So before we get kicked off, as you know, phones out during presentations is not ideal, but I'm going to encourage you to pull your phone out now, take a picture of the book, and to earn some free, or it's not free, but to earn swag if you post and at Diller, at PourMyBeer, hashtag Tap the Brigadier, whatever platform you're on, just swags for you. Whoever gets the most likes or shares or views, whatever, by the end of this hour has the Mac Daddy book bag with everything in it. So, you know, it's there for the taking. So I would encourage you, if you want to take a picture of the book, whatever, like, you know, we'll give you like a good minute to do that. The swag over there, just to kind of sell you on the swag, because the swag is pretty sweet. We have T-shirts, hats. I've got these waterproof bags, which are amazing for carrying beverages. At some point, yes. So just a quick post, nothing crazy, but you know, I'm curious to see within an hour who's the winner. Someone's going to be a winner, and it could be with like 12 likes. I don't know, whatever. So, anyways, that's that. After that, you know, you can put your phones away and enjoy the session.
Okay, so let's begin. First of all, I think we need to start with a linear story. So what we're going to do, I know you were raised in Virginia, in Chester, Virginia, and you came to Shippensburg to play football for Rocky Rees, a really great guy. I got to know Rocky pretty well. And tell us about your experience at Ship. Don't hold anything back. Tell us about those great dorms and all that.
So, you know, I'm from Virginia. Is anyone else from Virginia here? That's how it was when I came here as well. There was no other Virginians here. I was the lone Virginian. But I got recruited to play football here. Truth be told, I'd never heard of Shippensburg. I was told it was the James Madison University of Pennsylvania, which my sister went to James Madison, so that resonated. But yeah, I came home to visit, got to meet the football team, got to meet the coach, and they offered me a scholarship, which tends to help. And you know, I ended up coming in as a freshman and starting and having a really solid career here. So I started out as a business major. Macroeconomics was a tough class. I quickly switched to speech communications. As a result, there was not an entrepreneurship program to jump into. And then, I ended up, the one piece of advice I did coming into Shippensburg that helped the most is I went to a prep school called Fort Union Military Academy, which was mainly for football. And they said, the one professor there said, the only thing you need to commit to your freshman year is go to every class. If you just go to every class, you'll pass. And I ended up getting Dean's List my freshman year. Outside of I had to withdraw from macroeconomics. I think it was the teacher, not me, but anyways. But yeah, so that's how the journey started at Shippensburg. It's again, it was about a 3.5-hour drive to and from Virginia from here.
So you graduated in 2002, and then what happened? Where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so as I don't know, as a raise of hands, juniors, seniors, what do we got in here? Juniors, okay. So going into my senior year, I had no idea what I wanted to be or do. I kind of thought I might have a chance at playing professional football, but my knee surgery tended to play the damper on that one. But I sold Cutco knives going into my senior year of college. I don't know if any of you have heard of Cutco or have purchased Cutco. It's an amazing product. I highly recommend it. It's forever guarantee. It's a forever guarantee. So I sold Cutco knives. And I sold a lot of them. And prior to that summer going to my senior year, I always associated, what you made was your hourly rate times how many hours you put in. So I bagged groceries. That was $4.72 an hour. I worked at Roadway, putting freight in the trucks. That was $15 an hour. So it was a quick mathematic equation of how many hours times your hourly rate. Until I sold Cutco, which I made commission on, which I could make $300-400 in an hour selling Cutco knives. Now I had to set up the appointments, do the presentations, fill out the sales orders. But that was my first window into, I would say, entrepreneurship outside of hosting keg parties at Bard. But so that was that's what kind of kicked that whole journey off. And when hopefully you do read the book, there's a section in there about Shippensburg and Dr. Winter. Who was the dean of the College of Business at the time. And I used these sales techniques that I learned that summer to sell him on letting me take 400-level marketing courses. There's a sales process called the objection cycle. You can use it on your loved ones, your whoever. It's agree, but however, ask again. And so he originally said, you can't take 400-level classes. Like you left the business college your freshman year, and you've done speech communications the whole time and some acting. But I was in a play over there as well. I'm like the only football player that was also a thespian, which was a good, anyways. I digress. So I objection cycled him into letting me take 400-level marketing courses, to which I had Dr. Susan Stone, and she did the pen thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where it's like, here, sell me this pen. Without tooting my own horn, like 5 people got up and failed miserably. I got up, crushed it, and these were all 400 level. They met all the prerequisites. And she said, "What do you have experience selling? Because you clearly have sold something before." And I was like, "Knives. I sold $25,000 in knives this summer." And she was like, "What?" And she said, "Can you teach the next class?" And I said, "Sure. What do you want me to teach?" And she said, "I want you to take them through what it was like to sell." And so that was my senior year. I ended up getting a few more classes in marketing. And then right after college, I went into district management for the Cutco, or it was Vector Marketing, but Cutco. So that was my first kind of real job out of college. My parents reminded me that I didn't actually need to go to college to get that job, which was bittersweet. But it was a great experience. I got to run a business. I got to have I had over 60 reps work that summer for me. I got a percentage of what they sold and trained them and motivated them. And ultimately, so I was in PG County. If you're familiar with D.C., Washington, D.C., it was on the eastern side of Washington, D.C. Growing up where I grew up, actually started out in Petersburg, Virginia. And my sister and I were 2 of 4 white children in the entire elementary school. So when I went to PG County, I was also the minority, which I was comfortable with because that's how I grew up. But my team ended up doing like $250,000 in sales that summer, and it was again another step. It was a step towards, I didn't know what, but just kind of learning and growing.
So I know that you started Pour My Beer in 2009. I read that. So what was the big, I know the takeaway, but you need to tell them what the takeaway was. How did this idea come to fruition in your brain?
So it really started with getting the raw end of a pretty large deal. So as you go into the professional world, and whether you could do business development or sales or whatever, I always like having targets or goals. And one of the targets that my mentor at the time, or CEO of the company, was a publicly traded company called Modus. And I viewed him as like 20 years ahead of where I wanted to be. He'd sold a company, like yourself. His company was a staffing company. He sold it to a larger company. And he really took me under his wing. He took me to basketball games. He took me to his private country club. And I'm in my mid-20s at the time, mid to late 20s. And I'm making good money, mid-six figures. And I closed a deal in Baltimore. I lived at the time. I closed a deal with an energy company that would have netted me $250,000 in commission. So as a kid that grew up with not much, that was life-changing to me. And I'd started really putting I was like, wow, this is going to be an amazing life-changing experience. And then, without spoiling the book, I didn't get the money. The CEO decided to cap my commission at $25,000 instead of letting me earn what I should have earned. And that really, it sent me down a dark path. I played a lot of John Madden football for a little while. Not that that's dark or anything, but I was just kind of depressed. And I started reading about entrepreneurship, and I read about you probably heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad. You probably read there's another book. It's called 50 Great Businesses and the Minds Behind Them. And I started reading these, and the common theme was find a problem. Not start a fight, find a problem, but find a problem. And the first problem I was telling you over lunch was the carpet that didn't work out. I decided to try to sell carpet to college kids that were moving into their dorms. What I did not account for is that most people didn't want to buy a carpet when they got to college, I guess. So I got stuck with 200 carpets in a truck. That failed miserably. I did end up netting about $2,000, but it took me like 8 months and 20 pounds of flesh because I had to keep moving these carpets all over the place. And then I had a few other ideas, but I was out at a bar in Baltimore at the time. The Orioles were playing, and I was meeting some friends. And we're sitting there, and we're complaining because it's taken 20 minutes to get a drink. And we're doing the, wave the dollars at the bartender. The servers are running around kind of frantically, and we're like, this is terrible. We want to spend money, and you're not letting us spend money. And then I started thinking, well, this doesn't just frustrate me. The actual owner isn't able to make the money that we want to give him. So it's a dual problem. So that night I actually left my friends at the bar. I said, hey, I got to act on this idea. Like this is big. And it passed the friend test, which any entrepreneur, you pitch to your friends or family just to see what they say, just like we pitched you earlier, and we sold them, I think, right? So they all said, yeah, that sounds like, I would pay to not have to wait in line, kind of like an easy pass. Like if you've ever seen the tolls where people actually wait to pay. I lived in Chicago for 7 years, and there's literally lines that people will wait 20, 30 minutes to pay a toll versus just going through the easy pass. It makes no sense to me, but that's what I saw. I saw an opportunity to take what is a 9-step and could be a 20-minute process, cut it down to 1, and take less than 60 seconds. And that was I guess you could say the aha moment was that night I went home and wrote a business plan until about 4 a.m.
Okay. Now I want to get into the weeds on this because that's just the kind of that's the kind of entrepreneur I am. And I watched all the videos last night on your web page. So we're going to talk about some of these things because I'm fascinated by this. The one thing I want you to explain to everyone is that this is it's not a very like rocket science thing, but it's complex because it's got hardware, it's got software, it's got things that you can measure how much you're drinking or how much it is per item and everything like that. So I want you to walk us through exactly how this works. And please do the keg room. You got to do the
Yeah.
keg room because I was fascinated by the keg room.
So referencing the Rich Dad Poor Dad book that I'd read,
Right.
for not to spoil the book, but Rich Dad was the dad that was all about wisdom and work for free to get the knowledge. The knowledge is more valuable than the money. And so when I decided I was going to get on this path, I sought out. I went 0 for 50. I tried to sell 50 bars on the concept without a product, and they all said no because they wouldn't rip up their floors, but. The recurring name that kept coming up was this guy, Charlie Kleinrichard, who owns a draft dispense company in Annapolis that covers all of DC and Baltimore. And he said, they said, if you want to learn anything about draft beer and how it works, that's who you need to go to. So I called him up. I said, hey, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. I've used that tactic a few times, even when I was in Austria one time. And he said I could work for him for free. So I came to him and I learned how you install draft systems. I learned, how the whole world of draft works. There's so much complexity to it to get beer to come out of a faucet the way it comes out of. It could be from here to the old main, and you have to chill the lines the whole way to make sure that it comes out, and you have to have the right pressure. But going into the weeds of our technology. Everyone here is pumped gas. Our system functionally operates no different than pumping gas. There's a meter, there's a valve, and there's a payment. So, I wouldn't say I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We use a lot of the same components. We just had to build our own custom software. And without, again, spoiling the book, I had to go through, I would say, two really bad partnerships. Anyone here that's in a bad relationship, it's okay. You're learning. Hopefully you have enough guts to get out of that relationship. But bad relationships teach you so much more than the good ones. You appreciate the good ones because of the bad ones. But I went through some really bad partnerships. One where they sued me federally and tried to put me out of business before I could get PourMyBeer off the ground. We won, by the way, not to spoil that one. But you just want to. My radar for bad people has gotten much better than it was in my early 30s, late 20s. But yeah, as far as the components, it's a meter, it's a valve, and one of the things when I partnered with my last partner, who's my current partner in Austria, is I wanted to make our product so simple that a 6-year-old son, or my 6-year-old son, or a 6-year-old in general, could install it. Because if it's not simple, you're gonna have problems installing it and supporting it. So. The litmus test was after I partnered with the company in Austria, which required giving them a little equity in the company, committing to sales, or committing to orders. I committed to about $300,000 in orders the first year from them. And then they were able to reuse a lot of existing components. And again, I'm not going to spoil the book, but there was a lot of I guess pain working with these other partners. But the one joy was I got to meet this company in Austria that was phenomenal at dispense technology. And I can't speak for all Austrians, but these Austrians are just amazing people. And they really took a chance on me to some degree. I also had never wire transferred $100,000 overseas, which was kind of scary. My wife was not super supportive of that, but I said, if this is going to work out, this is the one. The book actually starts off with me when I flew over there to celebrate the first prototype with them. So I figured if the prototype was a bust, at least I'd have an amazing time in Austria. It would be a $100,000 trip to Austria, I guess. But yeah, so that was as far as getting everything to work, it's one of the positives of working with a company that's been doing dispense for 20 years was that they'd already gone through a lot of the problems that these other companies that were learning the business were starting to go through. But within the keg room, like to your perspective, what's cool is if you watch any of those videos, the one I think that they actually used for the promo video was me in the keg room, and you can hear this clicking. So this clicking is the valve. Every time someone puts a card up to the screen to get access to beer, wine, or cocktails, it clicks. And I always say it's kind of like a cash register because anytime that line's clicking, that means that people are pouring. That means that bar owner's making money. That's the cha-ching, exactly. So inside the cooler, it's the meter, the valve, and all the kegs. Like it's like Disney World in there. Honestly, it's a really cool experience.
Well, what I was struck by was that I know there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, but it looks to me like it's so easy. I mean, like, it's like, hey, why didn't somebody think it's like nothing is as obvious as the obvious, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's totally obvious. But I'm thinking to myself, why didn't somebody think of this sooner? Because there's a huge problem. You go anywhere that's crowded, you've got to wait to get something to drink, and you don't want to wait. People had rather pay money and have the flexibility of getting anything they want. And I know that if I went to one of these, and I've never been to one, but I've already looked on the little map, and I've seen this is the closest one. I think it's a country club in Hanover.
Oh yeah, and that's a fellowship grad.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to Hanover and try this whole thing out. But the thing I loved about it was you can taste, a little bit, see if you like it, and then if you don't like it, you can taste another one, and then you find out what you like and you fill it up. And the thing it gives you is perfect choice. Perfect choice.
You typically have to pay for those samples, or the bar is paying for those samples. So, to your point, people are willing to pay more for an experience than they are a beverage. So we're providing an experience, and we're improving the experience by making it so they can access it instantly. We did a video, I want to say 2017, where the whole concept was door to pour in under 60 seconds. And that to me, and even to this day, like I used to live in Chicago, or not in downtown Chicago, but near there. And I used to love going to Wrigleyville. We had one of our customers there, and it would be packed, absolutely jam-packed, no lines. And you have 44 self-serve taps, and you have 2 people running this business when it's at full capacity. And I loved looking at people enjoying themselves, because if you ever go to a busy bar and you see a line, those people aren't having fun.
No.
Maybe they're smiling, depends on how many drinks I guess they had, but they're typically miserable sitting in line to wait 20 minutes to get a beer,
Right. Well, let's talk for a moment. I mean, the thing is, I loved all the technology. I loved the wiring of the whole thing. I know that these folks don't want to hear about the wiring or anything like that, but let's talk about you've mentioned a couple of things that you've had, problems with partners and things like that. But I know when I had my business, I always had to check myself, and because I had to always remember to face the brutal facts. There's a lot of brutal facts that come up when you own your own business. Now, don't get me wrong. There's no better thing than owning your own business, because it's yours and it's your baby and you get to take care of it. But you still have to be able to face the brutal facts when things don't go exactly right. So tell us about some of those times where you've had some, let's just say, some troughs,
Yeah, I'm numb to them now. And I think that you have to, it's like that Mike Tyson quote. Anyone heard that one? Everyone's got to play until
they get hit.
You get punched in the face. Getting punched in the face, it hardens you, and for me, I'd say you have to have this insane optimism going into it to get you through those difficult times. I talk about in the book about when I first went to Ireland. That was my first kind of set of business partners, or actually second. So there was three terrible business partners. So the Irish gentleman that I was partnering with, we did the math that they had sold roughly 3 million euro of self-serve systems to Diageo, which was like, it's Guinness. Anyone had Guinness? Yeah. So they figured, well, there's 7 million people in Ireland, and they sold 3 million in revenue to one customer. There's 300 million people in America, so conservatively, we should do it 150 million, right out the gate in America. Which that level of optimism, you need that naivete or whatever going into it, because it's not about the money as much as it's about the opportunity. But that's why I would, when I first engaged with them, I came back from a trip there in December, and we wanted to do this bar and restaurant show. The bar and restaurant show was in March, and we had to get a website up. We had to get all the marketing literature. We had to build 20 by 20 structure. We had to get banking set up. The amount of things that I got done in 3 months was, it makes me kind of, I don't know, I guess you could say a little sick to my stomach thinking about it now, but it was that excitement and that opportunity that this is it. This is going to be the jump off point. And that, I think for the whole year, we did $180,000 in sales. So for a full year of work, here we are thinking we're going to do 100 million, and we did 180,000. And I just, you want to focus on the good in growing it, but then the next year we did 800,000, and then the next year we were on pace to do 1.7. We sold ourselves. My take home. I think I wrote in the thing or my bio, it says I decided to take a 95% pay cut when I started a company, which you have to. I also married well. I will say that my wife is. She was an athlete here at Shippensburg, and she went straight into pharmaceuticals. So that
good
was
business.
Yeah, I got the alcohol. It was knives and drugs, and then it was alcohol and drugs. So. But she's done very well in that, and that gave. Plus, I had done pretty well in my 20s to give a little bit of a cushion, but I didn't have a huge parachute to kind of fall back on. But then, and it's also timing. When we moved to Chicago, her company gave us 6 months of housing, so I didn't have, and that's when I had to part ways with my good business partner. Whenever you go into business with somebody, put all your cards on the table. How much money do you have? How much money do you need? What is going to come up in the next 6 months if we can't create revenue? And that it eventually ended my relationship business-wise with Declan, my business partner at the time, because he needed to take money every month, which I understand people have to do that, but it was killing the business. Because when you have money that's leaving the business and you don't have money coming in, it doesn't take long for you to run out of money and your business is done. So, you have to go through those tough choices. So going back to the gut punches and the things like that, having someone who I would consider like one of my best friends and saying, hey, you got to leave, that's tough. And he left on a good, I guess, on good terms, but we were 50-50 partners. And I sent him a copy of the book before it came out. I was like, I just want to make sure you're cool with everything I said in there because, I kind of shared some personal stuff about him in there as well. And he's done really well. Anyone that's had a C4 energy drink in the past, few years, he got in with them early on, and they're doing pretty well at this point. So he's, we do a 150-mile bike ride every year for multiple MS. So we've maintained our friendship, but it's like, I think you got to go through those tough periods. That's and then even when I finally got things going with the Austrian company, I was parting ways with this group out of California, but it was just me. I was selling, installing, supporting, product development, improvements. Going back to the first prototype when I saw it, I liken it to if you were at sea and you couldn't see land, and you've been starving and you feel like you're about to die, and then you see land or you see a helicopter coming to get you. And then seeing an idea that was in your head become real. I actually got to see when you blew in the flow meter that the beer went down, and I got to see when you hit your limit, a little tagline came up there, and then I get to give input. I was like, hey, when you run out of money, why don't you make a piggy bank pop up there and says load more money, or I got to give them ideas, and then they turn them into reality. And then it was really cool to see our customers react to those improvements or those features that we'd add to the system as we went along. But there was when we finally started getting some momentum, we had our supplier in Austria. They sent a bunch of screens over with basically the screens would turn fuzzy after a few weeks. So if you've ever seen a TV like old school where you see the fuzz on the TV, that was happening to our screens. And we didn't have much money, and it was only at the time 4 or 5 of us. So now we got stuck dealing with all these, I'm worrying about trying to sell and install more systems. And it's this, sales is a sales and support, everything kind of supports each other. So if I'm trying to convince this person to spend $50,000 with me, and I'm telling him to talk to this customer over here, and they talk to that customer, and the customer says, oh, we're having a lot of issues, the screens are fuzzy, guess what? Now they're going with our competitor. So it's just one of those, you have to solve those problems. And you have to also maintain the relationship with the prospects, because that's how you, in the beginning, if we didn't have sales, we went out of business. And it was, I was just talking to our CEO about this the other day. I was like, I still have kind of like, it's called startup hangover or bootstrapping hangover,
Right.
like where you still feel broke, even though you know there's money in the bank and you know you're okay, but
You'll never get over that.
it's scary.
Well, I can. You brought up a couple of points there, and I'm going to talk not a lot, but I'm going to say a few things, and then you can just come back with them. The first thing is about sales. Everybody thinks that entrepreneurship is all about marketing and being aware. For me, it was sales. Nothing starts till a sale is made. You can have the greatest product and everything, but until it's sold, and if it isn't selling, it makes no difference. And the thing I used to worry about most were sales. I mean, cash flow, obviously, but if you've got sales, cash flow is going to get taken care of. That's one issue I want you to address. And the second issue is you were talking about partners and putting all your cards on the table. I was in business with two other folks, and they were great guys. I'm not here to, I didn't write a book, but I did. The thing is, they were great guys. But the thing was they were younger than I was, and they had young families, they had kids and everything, and they wanted to sell the business. We got to a certain size, and if you've got a business which is not publicly traded, in order to get the equity out, you got to sell. That's all you can do, because all the equity is in the business. I mean, it's there. And we'd gotten pretty big. We were over 20 million in sales. So we were pretty big. We had a lot of equity in the business, but they were like, we got to sell. And I'm like, I don't want to sell. And they're like, we got to sell. And the thing is, we ended up selling the business and ended up working out okay and everything like that. But that's one of those things where you've got to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because that could have blown up in our face.
Yeah, everyone's intentions have to be aligned, and that's something I really talk about in the book too, is make sure that you have the same values, and that's what I say about my partner in Austria. He's a family man. Our agreement, so not to spoil the ending, but I sold 25% of the company to Coca-Cola in 2020, and that whole story is kind of crazy in itself, but that couldn't have happened if I didn't have a strong partnership with the guy in Austria. And our agreement was like a 2-page agreement. Like it's not an agreement. And if you do business internationally, just know that nothing holds up. Like if I wanted to sue him, it would cost me an insane amount of money, and I would probably lose. Or if he wanted to sue me, same way. So trust is such an important aspect of business, at least with partnerships as well. But going back to the sales, that was always my, learn how to sell. If I could give all of you any advice, learn. There's so many great, go into ChatGPT and type in, give me a 30-day course on how to sell, and it'll do it for you. But nothing beats, it's like, I saw an ad in New York. It was like, I can't remember the exact term, but basically reading about it doesn't create the ability to do it. You have to do it. So I was able to sell our way out of a lot of problems. One of the specific trips is I owed $100,000 to various suppliers, one being in Austria, and I'd also taken out like one of those payday loans, which are awful. Like I'd borrowed $50,000 and had to pay back $70,000, but you do what you got to do. And
usury laws.
Yeah, it was a loan shark situation. But I booked a trip to California, and I had 4 prospects who had built a ton of rapport with, and I wanted to get I had to get at least 2 of the 4 sales when I was out there, or I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so the first one was I also flew Spirit Airlines, which I call Break Your Spirit Airlines. In Chicago, I took an Uber to get to the airport, and I get to the airport, and I'm not a first-time flyer. Like you look at the app, you see if your flight's on time, everything's good. I get all the way to security. I get to the gate, flight's canceled. And there's no apology. It's like, oh, we got to come back tomorrow. So another Uber ride home. Again, I probably at this point had like less than $2,000 in my business checking account. So every dollar is like, oh my God, this is it. And I ended up flying out there, and I did a road trip from Los Angeles all the way to San Francisco, which is a nice, I needed a little break, honestly. I was kind of running thin at the time, but I ended up coming back with 2 checks for about $70,000, which was enough to kind of like keep things moving. And it was just, me and one other person at the time. And I'd always made the commitment to anyone that worked for me, like even if I had to forego pay or things like that, I never wanted them to feel, I guess that their income was threatened because of decisions I was making.
Well, we were never in that dire shape, but I can tell you this. I used to wake up from time to time and say, oh my God, if I make a bad decision, it's going to impact everybody in the business. I mean, they're sending their kids to school, they're saving for their retirement, they're paying off mortgages, all that sort of stuff. And if you make a bad decision or you do something which is not good for the company, and I would always say, I really need to focus on doing everything right because it's going to have big impacts.
And I'm sure with your business too, you kind of graduate to what stresses you out. Like in 2015, if I made a $1,000 mistake, it stressed me out. In 2017, $1,000 mistake didn't stress me out, but a $5,000 mistake stressed me out. And then in 2020, I got to the $50,000 mistake, and that still kind of burns. I'm not going to lie, like especially again, someone who while I was here had $17 in my checking account. So that definitely stung. But the lesson from that one is I was working with some New York guys that were like Goldman Sachs guys, and he kind of bait and switched me. He was like, "Hey, we'll provide you financial services."
Don't ever deal with Goldman Sachs.
Well, he was an ex-Goldman Sachs guy.
Worse.
Yeah, it was
worse.
It got, and you don't want to get in pardon my French, but a pissing match with a guy worth $500 million. So I was like, this guy who's got $500 million, that I know of, is squeezing me for $50,000 because I signed a 3-month consulting agreement where they would do a deep dive on our financials because he was going to put a few $1 million into the company. And then after 3 months, I was like, I don't want to keep paying this. Like let's discontinue this. I don't, and he clearly wasn't going to invest or didn't show intent. Well, I didn't cancel the contract before the 90th day. It was the 92nd day, and I had to pay to $50,000 to get out of the rest of the year contract. So technically, he felt that I should have paid $150,000 because it was another
3 months.
Yeah. So it was terrible. I learned from it. Hopefully, you can learn from my $50,000 mistake and never let a contract that's going to auto renew because that hurt. And
but that's I don't want to. I mean, I want to sufficiently scare you folks, but I don't want to. That's not everybody. That's an investment banker from Wall Street. Most people aren't going to be that. That.
That's not to your point. That's not the norm.
That's not the norm.
One of my other investors explained it to me. They said, well, he's a very black-white. Like it's a contract. He's not. All he's doing is enforcing the contract. It's not I am trying to take advantage of you thing, which I still don't wrap my head around that, but it is,
It was. Thing is when somebody's getting ready to invest in your business or buy your business and everything, and they're going through the due diligence thing, if they don't want to buy it, they know real quick. Generally.
Yeah.
Now if they're interested in buying, it might take a little while for them to build the trust and do the stuff, but when I've been approached, to buy into my business and everything, the people were told me pretty quickly, and except for the ones who eventually did buy it, which took a long, long time, and because we had to get into how do we value the business, and when you get into value the business, it's crazy.
The eye of the beholder, right?
Well, the thing is most people value businesses on their growth potential and their future cash flows. But like the people that bought my company, they did it on eyeballs and how many customers I had. In other words, they wanted to take my customers and sell their products. And so they wanted to know how many different customers I had than they had.
interesting. Yeah.
So that was a whole different way of valuation. And I was like shocked because I went in there thinking it was going to be based on future cash flows. And they're like, we don't care about future cash flows. We want to know how many customers you've got.
Yeah, no, it's
So it was different. I mean, those things do happen. They do. And I can empathize with, I've made a $50,000 mistake too, and it's
well,
humiliating.
What made that $50,000 mistake a little more palpable is it was contingent on me selling 25% of my company to Coca-Cola. So, I don't say this in the book, but Coca-Cola put $3 million into our company. And
Tell us all about that. That's a great. That's a good thing.
So it's January 2020. Anyone remember that period? It was like we were all happy, no masks. And we were gearing up for a really solid year. I flew our entire team out at the time. It was like 16, 17 people. We flew out to Las Vegas, stayed at the Caesars there, had planning sessions, went out, had a good. Because we're in the hospitality industry, I've got some great friends that get us through the back doors of like these insane clubs where the lines are just literally out the door. So we had a great time, and everyone's happy, and we're being responsible. And we're at the tail end of this Coca-Cola deal where they were gonna everything was getting set up, and so I felt it was at a point where I could tell the team, because we'd just done a press release. We'd written a mutual press release about the investment, and so I was like, I should tell our team that this is going to happen. And when a company invests in you, they do a deep dive on your financials. They look at your competitors. They do everything. And with Coca-Cola, it's actually Coca-Cola European Partners. They were buying a stake in us because they wanted to implement our technology all over Europe for non-alcoholic, because they're Coca-Cola. So that was, and they've got a whole investment, fund for, they outlawed single-use plastic bottles over there, so they're looking at alternative ways of dispense. They're looking at experiences. We checked every box. Like it was a great experience. So then we were about to do the investment, and then they were like, "Oh, there's one more agreement we need to get. There's a collaboration agreement." And I was like, "Okay, the collaboration agreement means that anything that we developed for them stays only for them." Meaning, so it took a little longer, and then I'll never forget, I emailed our lawyer in, I want to say, end of February, beginning of March. I was like, please get this deal done. We have to get this deal done, like, because things are starting to get weird, with the whole COVID thing. And I got the collaboration agreement did not get, executed. They already had all the wire stuff set up. The money was supposed to hit the account, and then COVID hit, and their funds got frozen, and all of our customers overnight closed. Anyone remember the restaurant industry in 2020? Try running a business that is solely dependent on the restaurant industry. So sales went down. All of our customers that were paying monthly support called us and were like, "Can you please?" Because we have a dual model. We make money off the sale of the product, typically $35,000, with around 50% margins, and then we make recurring revenue off the support and software, which is anywhere from $300 to $500 per customer. So we went from having the residual of, call it $60,000, $70,000 that covered most of our operating costs to like half of that, because some people just didn't cancel. Just like any subscription service, they forget. But I went the route of saying, like, we're human. We're very humane in the sense that if someone's calling me and they're like, "Hey, the government shut me down. Can I not pay this month?" I'm not going to say, "Yeah, I don't care. Like, pay me anyways. It's contractually obligated." And I think we got a lot of goodwill in the fact that we did kind of let them do that. But then the investment didn't happen, and I had a $50,000, that number 50 keeps coming up, doesn't it? $50,000 legal bill, because lawyers that put deals together cost a lot of money. And they do save you money. I'm not going to trash that profession, but it was tough. And that's actually when I started writing the book. I was like, I got a lot of time on my hands. I might as well write a book, right? But we made it through. So June, we ended up having like a $200,000 month, which was a good month, considering the fact that it was a pandemic.
You're in a dead industry.
Yeah, it literally shut down. And then we ended up, we had a 10% growth that year. We had expected to do, like, I think actual numbers, we did $3 million the year before, and we were expected to do like, $4 to $5 million. And then, COVID hit, and we still grew. Because at the end of the year, in September, I did close the deal with Coca-Cola. So, March paused, April, he literally called me, my contact was like, is your company going to be around much longer? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. We're going to figure this out. And we did. And, certain people took time off, certain people took delayed pay or, took unemployment. But we were back full swing, I would say, by late July, August.
The good thing is a few states stayed open too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that was a big help, but it was like Texas and Florida.
Yeah, Florida. I mean, I actually lived in the state of Florida for the month of January of 2021, and COVID for some reason didn't go south. It stopped at Georgia, and we. But it was, anyways. It was a unique time in history. Hopefully, we never have to redo.
I know that's a good story though.
But then, it's still surreal to me to, like, again, growing up in middle, I guess, class family, and just we used to save pennies to get a Nintendo. That was like, we'd roll pennies, and that's how we would get things. And then seeing like $3 million hit the checking account and be like, wow, like,
it's a good feeling.
It's it's not a finish line. It's a validation.
The thing is, though, it's I don't want to make this because it sounds so crass, but it really isn't about the money. Everybody looks at you like, no, it's about the money.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go on a shopping spree, it wasn't money that went into my pocket. It went into the company's pocket, and then we were able to start doing things that we wouldn't have been able to do without the money. And I mean, that's why we doubled our sales the next year. We were able to invest in certain, key people. Like I hired a COO that had exited a company for like $50 million, so I was able to attract more people with experience going down those roads that had not been part of our company before. So Coca-Cola, I mean, it's one of the number one brands in the world. I mean, that's a pretty nice company to kind of like.
It's a good partner.
Add to, yeah. And then we're doing 300 Burger Kings right now in Spain. So if anyone goes to Spain and you go to Burger King, that's our technology. When you go in there, you order your Whopper, and you get a little QR code on your receipt. And then that QR code lets you pour 2 drinks. And they're also looking to use this at the Olympics in Paris. So, they're a strategic partner by all means. I mean, we're not making a boatload of money off of the sales that we're doing with them, but they're validating the concept by attaching their name to us. And ironically, we're one of their favorite investments. We are changing our name, sadly. So this is very limited gear over here, PourMyBeer. We're going to be PourMyBev as of, I want to say, April.
Ooh, but that's okay. It's broadening the brand.
Yeah.
Broadening the brand. PourMyBev.
Bev, yep.
That's good.
Yeah, so 2022, we did a little over $6 million. And we've got the nice part is almost all of our operating costs is covered by the recurring revenue. So, we're doing about $180,000 a month in recurring revenue, and that covers, similar to a car dealership. If anyone has ever wondered about that business model, the service department covers all the expenses, or it should if it's a healthy one, and then the sales of the vehicles is how you actually, they make money.
Yeah. Well, it's just like I guess the thing is Costco. The thing is selling all that stuff. They 500 gallons of peanut butter. They don't make any money at all. They make all their profits off of memberships.
Yep.
So the memberships is where all the money is. So in your case, it's subscriptions.
It's funny. So you mentioned Costco. One of the things I will say about entrepreneurship is it opens so many doors to meetings that you would never think you've had. Like, so I got to, when I sold that, remember I talked about going to California, one of the projects I sold was in Bakersfield, and the gentleman that I sold the system to owns a wine shop, and I built rapport with him, and he said, I said, I've never been to Napa Valley. That sounds like an amazing experience. And to go to Napa Valley with someone who's buying millions of dollars of wine a year, you get treated like you're buying millions of dollars of wine. And the gentleman that hosted us was David Senegal's son, who David Senegal started Costco.
Yep.
And
that's why he's got a winery in
that's why he's got
Napa
a
Valley.
winery. But it was, it's just like I would have never gotten to have charcuterie and the CEO's son's, winery. If I
Yes.
think so, charcuterie.
All right. Well, we're gonna do one more thing, and then we're gonna turn it over to some student questions, because I know we've got a lot of questions from students. And so, I'm gonna end it with our little game here, and it's called underrated or overrated. So I'm just gonna mention a couple of names here, and then you get to you can talk about your experience and everything like that. So, let's start with Richard Avenue. Back in the day, and here it is today. Is that underrated or overrated?
Man, definitely underrated. That was the party. That was also where most people got their underage drinkings.
Yes.
So it was that was
Yes.
lots of time invested. I will say I never got an underage drinking, and I was at a party where like 100 people did on Richard Ave.
Amazing.
But it was because if they didn't do the testing the night before. If they'd done it the night before, it might have been different.
Okay. Austria. Underrated or overrated?
Way underrated. I think they call it the poor man's Switzerland. I don't know if you ever heard that, but I can't stress enough how important it is for everyone to travel and see. And it's accessible. And, even the United States, get out, explore. A 12-hour drive is not that hard. We did it every year, 3 times a year, going from Chicago to Pennsylvania in one day. Like, so, I never.
All right. 90s hip hop.
Underrated, I would say. I mean,
I'm getting them all underrated here.
It's the best. I mean, 90s
the
hip hop.
90s hip hop is the best.
So again, I could sing the entire Chronic album from front to back.
All right.
So.
All right. They don't even
Google
know what
Chronic.
They don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Here's one that's very important for your business. Craft beer. Underrated or overrated?
I don't know. I feel like it's hit its peak.
Yes.
I
I agree with that.
So
It's plateaued. It's not going
definitely,
down.
Yeah, like it's definitely. Would that make that overrated? I feel bad saying
I think
it's
it is overrated. For me personally, I don't want to answer for you, but when I was looking at everything and I was thinking about your business, there's lots of craft beers out there and everything, and there's a lot of people doing it, but it's no longer the growing industry that it once was.
Well, another reason we're switching our name is during the pandemic, a friend of mine did a project for us where we consolidated our entire database, and we could see out of 12,000 lines what was the most poured beverage, and it was margaritas. So we didn't want to change our name to Pour My Margaritas, but margaritas, they sell like hotcakes everywhere. So margaritas on tap. They're just cocktails on tap. They're batch making cocktails.
Okay, I have a question. You just brought that up. I'm gonna go out of underrated. I only got one more. What do you mix up a batch of them and just put them in a great big container? How do you get it?
We have if you Google Pour My Beer batch cocktails, you'll get how to buy it on Amazon and everything. It's everything's there. But it's simple. If you make a Tom Collins. You take the recipe that you see and you times it by 100, and then you put it all in like a little keg, and you mix it around, and you're good to go. So it's really, I mean, you want to do it for taste, like you want to make sure it doesn't, taste.
It's got to be good.
It's got to be good, but it's surprisingly simple and way more economical. What I failed to say is the pandemic did do us a favor. It highlighted. Well, the hospitality industry is currently still under distress when it comes to employment and labor. A restaurant or bar that's running traditionally, 30% is about their cost of labor. So if they're doing $1 million a year, they're paying their people $300,000 out, right? With us, it's 11%. So that same business that's doing $1 million a year, instead of paying $300,000 for labor, they're paying $110,000, which gives them an additional $200,000 in profit that they can reinvest or take home. And we have customers that are doing $6-7 million a year through our system. So that's a significant number when you can take their labor from 30% down to 11%.
Yeah.
Fewer servers and people are able to buy more frequently. They just walk up and scan the code.
Yeah, and they can't. If you've seen, everywhere you go, it says we're hiring because they can't find servers or bartenders, and we're here to say you don't need them. You know, like you need
Don't
some.
say that to these people.
You need some. I was a server. I valued that experience.
I waited tables and bartended.
I think you have to.
You have to. That's part of getting a college degree, right?
And if anyone's ever mean to a server, unfriend them. Don't talk to them again. Those people should not. You can't be mean to servers. They're there to do their job. You know?
They're there because they're poor.
I was there.
I was there. All right. Well, what I want to do now is I want to turn it over to student questions and everything. Don, you want
Thank you. Do we have student questions? We'll start over here. There you go.
So I know you just finished your book and all, but like, what is a big goal for yourself, and also like a goal for the company that you have in mind?
So there's a guy I follow called Jesse Itzler. I don't know if you ever heard his name. His wife started Spanx. I don't know if you've heard of Spanx, but she sold it for like $1 billion. A friend of mine got me a meeting with him, and I spent a day at his house in Atlanta, which was amazing. But he has this whole concept called the Misogi, and he talks about building your life resume. So having one big thing that you do every year that's like when I think back forever of 2022, it'll be the year I wrote the book, because that was my Misogi. So your question about like what, I guess that can be business, that can be life, whatever. But for revenues, we're focused on 10 million, and we're already on pace to hit that this year. So that our company, we do something called the Vivid Vision. It's where you basically get in a time machine and go 3 years into the future, and you write down everything specifically that you expect to happen in that 3 years. And then every quarter you assess, are we getting closer to this or are we not? And I'm happy to share that. I can send it to you, and you can share it with everybody if you want. Or you could just email books@pourmybeer.com, and I'll just reply with a link to it. But that helps kind of give everyone a sense of where you're going, because, but the long-term goal, like, without getting caught up in the mental math game again, it's like we have an $800 million opportunity right now with Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, Best Western. So they're already implementing our technology. So when you go into a Hilton, your room card lets you pour beer, wine, cocktails, and they've made us a brand standard. They've done the documentation. We've partnered with a manufacturing company in Tampa. We're shipping them as we speak. It's not to the point where we're shipping like 100 a month, but Hilton's already said they're expecting to do 230 projects with us this year, because any Homewood Suites or Home 2 that's going to be renovated or built is going to have our technology in there, which is awesome. But more importantly, we have to deliver, and it has to work. And that's the, I guess. But when it comes to like what people sometimes ask, like, what would you sell the company for? What's the long-term goal in that regard? I can't say that is crystal clear, because my mindset got changed a few years ago when someone said, why do you want to sell your company? What if you have a $30 million a year company, and you own, right now I own 55% of the company, and it's profiting, $3 million a year, $5 million a year, whatever. I'm getting 53% of that. So again, I can't say that part of the equation is figured out. I'm enjoying building what we're doing. We have 30 employees now, which is weird to say. And what's tough for me is I don't get to be involved in every project, and I really missed that side of the business. But yeah, we want to do 10 million this year. We're on pace to do that. We want to do 20 to 25 next year. And our CEO currently, he's heavily compensated on growth and EBITDA. So he wants us to get to 50 million, because he gets more shares as we grow. So it's I get diluted, but so does everybody else. But he maxes out at, I want to say 10% equity, which is still, he would be set for life if he can get us to 50 million. So because our whole goal is multiples. Like we, if we can structure ourselves as a SaaS company or a data company, which is a whole nother conversation. Like, we know the age, sex, and zip code of every ounce dispensed, poured, consumed through our system. So we've yet to monetize that side of our business too.
Some more opportunity. Yeah.
Opportunity.
We have any other questions? One right up front.
I have few questions, but I'll start with this. What are you most proud of?
That's a good one. Let's see. You want me to stick to business here? Or?
I was going to qualify it, but I chose not to.
Okay. My son had a tumor on his spine in 2021, and he had to get it removed. What I'm most proud of is that I had built a business of people that when I had to step away and live in a hospital for a month and a half, that the business actually grew. So, you talk about extreme highs and lows. Got a $3 million direct deposit in September, find out my son has a spinal, tumor that he could never walk again if we don't get removed in December. So, it was a tough kind of road there with that, but I'm most proud of the fact that I was able to drop everything business-wise, focus on my family, and the business actually grew, which I was really proud of.
That's good. That's good. Let's see if anybody else has one. Is there anybody else? Oh, we'll take another one, sir.
I did not watch all your videos, and you may have explained this in some of your videos. By the way, I'm a business graduate, 1988 here at Shippensburg. So, from Shippensburg, yes. So I didn't watch all the videos, but as a server, you have the opportunity to evaluate whether or not a patron has had too much to drink. How do you overcome that with the self-serve?
I love that question. I'm sorry for not bringing this up earlier. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I reference in the book is when you look at other businesses, you can model after them. So if you want to be a carpenter, go study a carpenter and go work for them for free or whatever. Learn how they're doing it. There was no track record for this. This world didn't exist. So I had to become a paralegal for every state's liquor laws and figure out how to get approval, because to get someone to spend $50,000, they have to know that the government's not going to say, sorry, you can't use that. So to your point, I got some legal advice, but I position it as a virtual pitcher. So it's similar to a bottle of wine or a pitcher of beer. You put that on the table, they have control over who's going to receive it. And I was able to prove that our system actually prevented people from consuming as much as a pitcher or as much as a bottle of wine. It was 2 drinks. So when you have a glass of wine and a glass of beer, that equals the number 2. If you have a half a glass of wine and 1.5 beers, that equals 2. 1 cocktail, 1 wine, that's 2. When you hit 2, the screen comes up, and I actually changed the verbiage on there. It used to say, you've hit your responsibility limit, please see one of our staff. I put, you're beautiful, which is fun to see people react to that. You're beautiful, like explanation point. See one of our staff so they can reauthorize your card and you can keep having a great time. So anytime someone's consumed their second drink and they see the meter go down as they're pouring, so when it gets to the bottom and the glass is empty, they know, hey, and then it just prompts them. And then a server just comes over, they use their server card, which is a server or an admin, and then they hit reauthorize, and then the person puts their card or wristband up, and then they can continue drinking. So every state, except for Utah, which I don't know if anyone's Mormon here, but they don't drink, and they run the liquor board there, so I can't see Utah approving us anytime soon. But, yeah.
And that's real interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap us up in the interest of time. Did you want to?
Yeah, we got to have a big winner here. Who got the most likes? Let's start it off with 5. Did anyone get 5 likes on their post? Anybody? Oh, we got a 5. We got 10. Do we have a 10 liker? Oh, we got 20. Whoa, I think you won with 20. Anyone beat 20? So what was the total number? What'd you get? There we go. Well, here, let's give a round of applause for 20 likes.
That's really
there.
great.
So now, what's your name? Lydia. When you see Lydia walking around campus, check her bag. She's probably got beer in there. Yeah, I do hope you enjoy the book. It was an experience. If you ever do want to write a book, I know the company that really well that I wrote it with. I can point you in the right direction. Actually, we have a publishing company right here too, so don't want to step on those toes. So without kind of giving my secret away, I will give my secret away. So I'm in some entrepreneurship groups, and the book was really to validate, like put our I guess flag in the sand or whatever, to stake our claim that we're the industry expert in all things self-pour. There's some crazy stories in there that I think you'll enjoy. The first one's me almost dying in Austria, which was fun. I'm glad I made it. But the general idea is that there's lessons along the way. But I'm currently using that book to get meetings with the CEOs of Top Golf, and I'm sending not just the book and like, hey, love to meet you. It's like this over-the-top box with like a thoughtful message in there. Like if they went to University of Missouri, it's like stuff from Missouri. Like so, I'm using it as essentially like a deal magnet, if you will. But we also sold a few thousand copies pretty quickly on Amazon, and it got ranked number 1 in 4 categories, so that was kind of cool too.
Way to go. Everybody, please thank Josh with a round of applause for us. We're very grateful that you came.
Yeah, this was the first one here, right?
This first one in Stew Hall,
Yeah, always
really
remember your
renovated.
first.
You know, a little fact about this, I learned that this was once a gymnasium with a track around up here, and in the basement somewhere there's a secret tunnel to Old Main, which has a secret tunnel down to the Morton
What?
Engineering Building. Facts. But don't go looking for them, because I hear they're walled off pretty well. Hey, please don't leave me with any pretzels or candy bars. Thank you, everybody. You can get out of here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.